Okay, hi guys. So I've come up with a way which I believe is the easiest way to pass your pharmacy oral exams. So specifically your intern oral exams, but this would be very applicable to any OSCEs where you're role playing as the pharmacist and you have to speak to the patient and then the doctor and you're trying to find a problem. So this is based on basically years of me doing this now where I've identified 4 steps in which you essentially have to go through in order to pass the exam. And there are also the 4 steps where you fail. So the steps are information, new, problem, and solution. So the very first step, the information step, is basically where you're trying to gather as much patient information as possible. So what medicines they're on, what medical conditions they have, what allergies do they have, their height, their weight, etc. And where students fail in this, and I do know students that have failed in this step, the very first one, is they just quite simply forget to ask, like, are they taking any over-the-counter medicines? And then they take in something that interacts with one of their medicines that they're on. So very easy step to forget to do, but it's very easy to pass. And the easiest way to pass is just to make sure that you're doing very consistent questioning. So when I say consistent questioning, I mean consistent from your practice exams. So make sure you're asking the exact same questions in your practice exams and then so when you sit your real exams, you're asking still the exact same relevant questions. So while you're doing this information gathering stage, it's quite important that you take at least a mental note of anything that has been new or changed, because that's what we're going to need to do in this next step here. But don't stop gathering information just because you found something that is new. That's why I've done them as 2 different steps. So once we've gathered enough information, look at what what is new essentially. So what's changed in terms of, is it a new drug that's been introduced? Has the drug dose changed? Has a drug been stopped? Because that will identify what the problem is. So we need to see what is new. Often students kind of get too fixated on a problem that's not really a problem, like say it's an interaction between 2 medicines that the patient has been on for 5, 10 years. That's very unlikely for it to be a problem. So you're much better to hone in on what is new. So basically anything that is changed or different. From there, we move on to the problem stage. So we need to try to find it. Sometimes it is very simple. It's as easy as putting it into your interaction checker and then we find the problem. Sometimes it is a lot more difficult than that. So if you cannot find the problem straight away, the important thing to do is not to panic, and then know that the problem is often found in the additional information of the AMH. So that would be go to the new medicine and then see read all the additional information basically. So what's contraindicated, what are the precautions, what are the adverse effects, what are the counseling points, and often that will lead you to what the actual problem was. But it is quite important that you do not get misdirected. So often there can be a very minor problem that you draw your attention to. So say there's a minor interaction, but then there's really a much larger problem. So misdirection, I've talked about that and written about that in numerous places. So my last video was on that. I've got a pinned post on LinkedIn. It's in my book. So if you're not familiar with it, do make sure you read it, because that is still the most consistent way that students fail, is they get misdirected. So they get tricked that the minor problem that they found is actually the major problem. Now, once you find the problem, it's very important not to just stop there and straight away then call the doctor or speak to the patient without having an appropriate solution in mind. So it's not good enough to just identify the problem. You need to know what to do to then solve it. Now, where students fail, and this has happened, is that they then introduce, like, say, a new medicine, like, say, if they had to change medicine that the patient was on because it interacted with another one, so they had to change it to something else. They then introduced the medicine that was contraindicated in this patient and their medical conditions. So that then becomes an instant fail as well. So it's very important that you do not introduce more problems. And the easiest way to make sure that you're not introducing more problems is to plug whatever, like say, new recommendation you have back into MIMS, so back into interaction checker, which you would have been doing in the problem finding stage, or double check that it's the appropriate recommendation in the ETG. So I like the ETG when looking at what medicines to recommend next because it lays everything down very systematically in terms of this is first line, this is second line, this is what you do if they're pregnant, this is what you do if they're breastfeeding. So that is how you handle the solution step, probably the easiest. And it's like I said before, very important that you have the solution before you speak to the doctor. Now, this is a four-step system. You do not have to go from one step to the other, but the students that pass the exam the smoothest, at least the ones that I've worked with, have always done it in the manner where they consistently cleared one step before going to the next one. The students that I noticed that are very nervous and potentially could fail the exam, they bounce between every step while they're doing the exam because they're trying to find what there could be the problem is, what could be new. They get honed in too easily on something that's not really the problem. And then they don't even have a solution before they speak to the doctor. So I'd recommend you do your best to try to clear each step. So gather as much information as you can, identify what was new, find what the problem is, then find the appropriate solution. So try to clear them all as much as possible before going to the next one. And then that will allow your examination process to go as smoothly as possible. And that in turn will make you a lot less nervous when you sit in the exam. If you would like to see how I basically applied this to an exam, that is available in the latest recording that I did on the 2022 intern workshop. So that is available on the Memorize Medicine shop for you to purchase, and then you can see how I apply this to basically two exams. So I hope you found this all very helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.